Wake up, buy here, pay here people. It's a beautiful day. Go grab yourself another cup of joe and say hello to Jim and Michelle Rhoads on the Buy Here, Pay Here Morning Show. Take it away, you two.
Good morning, everybody.
Well, hello.
Hey.
Friday, right?
It is.
Uh-oh.
I got a frog in my throat somehow.
Froggy.
Little froggy.
Welcome, everyone.
Welcome. Yeah, we're glad to have you all here. It's end of the week, and yeah, excited for the weekend.
For sure. Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
Announcements. I'm thinking about BHPH United. I didn't prepare a list today. I know we have that. The one big thing I want to share with our listeners is we just recorded yesterday with Brent Carmichael and Steve Levine, a really great Tote the Note podcast on compliant underwriting.
So before we go into compliant underwriting, we actually have two podcasts. That was created before the morning show was. Mm-hmm. And so Tote the Note, if we were to describe the difference between the two, the morning show is kind of like Good Morning America. It's more, free flowing. We talk about stuff, we giggle, we, goof off, all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's live. And then the Tote the Note is kind of like 60 minutes.
Right.
It's more serious, getting it, but there is some laughing, especially when you get Brent and you together.
Yeah, Brent and I have fun. Yeah,
they have quite a good time. But so it's usually more impactful things, kind of like when we just did the event in March.
Yeah, it's kind of long form subjects, like things that we want to take on that are
so it was
a little more
compliance in. And it was
underwriting.
Underwriting. Yeah. I was thinking that right.
And again, kind of a dry subject, except that underwriting is important for us to figure out what we can and can't do. Mm-hmm. I'll give you a hint. The word discrimination came up multiple times.
Oh, yeah.
So, there's just going to be, it's important for us to understand how to stay out of the crosshairs, of the governing agencies. And so, and it's possible. We just, when folks like Steve Levine show up, we should pay attention. And he was, I would say he was less legal and more pro buy here, pay here. He's very much an advocate for the buy here, pay here dealers, and so it was good information. Yeah. So anyway, look for that. We expect to have that released sometime next week.
Yeah.
And then we also hope to have Steve on the morning show when that thing goes out.
So probably in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Good morning, George. Good morning, George. And good morning, Taylor.
Jorge and George. And Tyler everybody. Simmons. Yeah, Tyler, I'm not surprised you would be tuned in for that episode with Steve Levine. Yeah, it's quite good. So I know you're going to enjoy that. So look forward to you'll also want to watch for that morning show with Steve. So we'll figure that out.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Shall we get to numbers?
Yeah. Is there nothing else?
We got BHPH United coming up. That's just barely a couple of weeks away. I think that's 2 weeks from Sunday, maybe. Yep. So,
and then on the heels of that is the NEO Summit. And those of you who are NEO users, please reach out to your folks at NEO and get yourself registered if you can. If you're planning on going to the Buy Here, Pay Here United Summit, stick around an extra day if you can. We will be there for that because we've got a lot of our clients on NEO and. So I spend quite a bit of time with our clients, just going through all the scenarios and working with them on NEO. So I'm excited to learn a little bit more.
If you're not a NEO user, go to neoverify.com and check them out. Schedule a demo with Scott and check that thing out. Because it's really, it's a big advantage for buy here, pay here dealers. So
Okay. So you want to talk about
cash flow.
Okay.
And it's not just me that wants to talk about this. There was a huge little thread in Buy Here, Pay Here boardroom group. I think is where that started. Was looking it up as the show started here. But it's interesting how it actually was in the success group. So for those not following BHPH Success, BHPH Boardroom or our Buy Here, Pay Here specific Facebook groups, a lot of great conversation in there. And there was one about cash flow, and I see this come up, and I think it's a problematic conversation because inevitably the conversation is incomplete.
Yeah.
Like you can't there's so many variables, so many factors to consider. And I know, like our good friend Tommy in Pennsylvania, those of us who have ADD, you don't have time to read all the stuff and give the full explanation.
Yeah.
We're all busy out there. And so I just think it's kind of problematic. And so what I wanted to do for today is, go back to the cash flow modeling we did recently on the prior episode. When was that? Monday?
Mm-hmm.
So we'll share that link with this episode and tie them together so you can find, because this is just kind of a follow on to the same conversation we had before. Mm-hmm. And I got to say at the beginning, for those who didn't see that other episode, this modeling that we're going to look at is based on a tool that I built many years ago. We still use it with our clients. Mm-hmm. It's meant for kind of high level projections, trying to help dealers, dealers figure out how much.
Frogs are contagious in our throats today. Yeah.
Get a little water here. But it's mostly meant to help dealers figure out exactly how much capital is going to be required to execute their strategy and how long it's going to take before they get to a place where they're cash positive.
Yeah. Yeah. We had quite a bit of feedback from the show on Monday, and we knew when we finished Monday that there was so much more meat on the bone that could be really helpful for dealers out there. So, so we may even have another episode.
I think it's likely. Yeah, there's because we're not even really digging into the RFC side of this yet.
Well, and just so you all know that this is like when we do this with clients, it's typically 3+ hours on over a couple of days that we're going through and like dialing it in for a specific dealer, because we'll show them the overall, and then it's like, well, what do you want here? What do you want here? What do we suggest here? And so there's an awful lot that's there.
And I think one of the things that I hear a lot of people say, figure $1 million or $2 million to get in by here, and I think, well, I'm not sure that's true. And I know it's not true, because the reality is there's all different strategies. Mm-hmm. And you and I meet people all the time who are looking at buy here, pay here, and they already have a business. They might have a service center. They might have
which means
retail
their overhead
store.
Is like they've already got that covered.
They've got their rent covered. I mean, for them to add another 5 to 10 buy here, pay here sales a month would cost them almost nothing in overhead to function.
For overhead, yes.
Yeah, they're already licensed. They don't have all the licensing expense that a typical dealer would experience, and all that rent that you have to pay during your licensing period and all those kind of things. So, compared to a standalone startup buy here, pay here, there are just ways to get there. And also, people forget to allow for the pace of sales. I think when they say you're going to need $2 million, well, yeah, if you're going to sell 30 a month, then you probably need $2 million, but that's not the strategy for everybody.
Yeah.
And again, not everybody's got the same amount of overhead. I think that's the thing that people need to allow for. Sometimes people can step in this business and have a way to cover overhead. We've met people who had family that was going to work in the business. They were going to commit 12 months to working because they had other sources of income, and they were going to get 12 months as operator managers
without any kind of compensation.
So
and
now your
like,
costs,
just doing this.
The point is, I just think we got to be careful about, because we discourage people needlessly, or we encourage them kind of recklessly. It's like we just really need to get good information. I think mostly I'm looking for complete information, and what we're doing here today is still incomplete. But it's way more thorough. Like, it's way more specific than what we hear out there. And so I just think we need to be careful, and we need to really, make sure we're looking at apples and not oranges, when we're in
they're both fruit.
True.
but
but they're not the same.
They're not
so
the
I
same.
think we got to be careful to make sure we look at the whole picture. But so if you want to share that on the screen, I'll kind of start taking folks through it. Yeah. So that I know will be a little difficult for you to read. And we also remember that some of you are tuning into this podcast, in the car or.
So if you would like to see the charts, just make sure that you go to our YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And it's James Rhoads /Octane Group.
Yeah, I think you've got the thing we can share on the screen at some point where you can find.
Well, again, if people are listening
just look for BHPH Morning Show.
It's YouTube. Jim Rhoads /The Octane Group is the page, but the BHPH Morning Show.
Right.
Oh, can I squirrel? for just
For
a second?
Of course.
So we gave some of our smart home technology stuff to kids when we moved away, and then they gave it back because they're like, I don't like people listening to me. So whatever. One of them is a Google Home screen that we usually keep in our bathroom, and so we can watch YouTube, we can listen to. And so yesterday, right after I got it set up, I was like, buy here, pay here morning show, and like, bloop, there it was, and I was pretty tickled.
Yeah,
I was pretty tickled.
If Google is listening in to us in our bathroom in the morning, those people are goofy. Yeah, right.
We're goofy. They're not goofy, but we're goofy.
Yeah,
so
sure.
it could be entertaining. So I'm done with the squirrel.
Okay,
now
gotcha.
we're looking at the thing, and YouTube, all the stuff.
Yeah. So I would say, we're going to show these numbers on the screen, so it'll be harder when you're just listening to the audio. But just a recap of the thing. Don't let these numbers scare you. The numbers are based on a scenario we currently have loaded. Your numbers would likely vary.
Yeah. So we're just like a quick review what we do. We're not going to go back into all of this
not
so
all
much,
the details
but
there.
It's based on how many units, what your average cost, what your average selling price, based on this model, 15 units a month, your sell price average 12.5. All, and like there's some things in their startup costs are at $30,000 that we're saying with this one that it's a max out of just a little over $1 million.
Right. And so you're that's at a volume of 15 sales a month at a $12,000 or 12.5 price. I mean, there's just a lot of things here that are, again, factors. And I said this morning in some of my comments out there on social is like, there's a ton of opinions about this, and there are probably just as many or more factors. Like, you just got to look at all these variables, all these factors to make a judgment. Yeah. And like I say, what we're looking at here is not perfect. But what I really set out to do, I was up early this morning, kind of creating a new visual on how to think about, where the money goes. Like I almost made that the title of the podcast, is like, where does the money go when you start a buy here, pay here operation? And a lot of people are out there and established, still trying to figure out where's money going. Like,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that one of the things that when we are dealing with new dealers and we're dealing with established dealers that are needing some like help, that overhead is in a lot of these. I mean, you have your buy price and your sell price and all of those kind of things, but overhead is your, like, the thing that can move the needle really, really quickly.
Sure. And I think in this particular scenario, we've only got 18,000 a month of overhead loaded in year one. It goes up a little bit in year two, but just because I'm using a formula that drives off of just a growth factor. But bottom line is, where would that overhead be for you? That's why these numbers, it's like you can't be sure where you're going to land until you actually model out your stuff.
And like you said, there's some that we come in and they're like, we have other streams of income. We don't need to draw salaries, not for the first year. We have others that we want to be able to draw $75,000 a year or $150,000 a year or whatever. And so it's like, it really does move that needle quite a bit. Those kind of, and like the rent of the property that you're at and how many people you want to hire. And, is this going to be a family business where everyone's just kind of pitching in because the pot of gold at the end of the thing, or are you having to, it's so many things. So, yeah.
Well, and the other thing I think we touched on in the first episode is the thing about, just discipline to the plan. I mean, these are just numbers. So I remember talking to a dealer a while back who said, we did our modeling back when we started, and I think we set our budget at $1,000 per car on recon, and I'm picking numbers. I can't remember what they were, but it's 1,000 on recon, and we're actually more like $1,500-$1,600. And he's like, I feel like we didn't model it very well. I thought, well, is that a modeling problem, or is that a discipline to the policy problem? I mean, did we set a policy, and why did we deviate from it? I mean,
and that's another factor. It's like, are we putting cars that we would drive on the lot and fixing them until they're to the point where it's like or are we putting cars that will fulfill a need for our customers.
Different subject. We'll come back to that one day. But I think that's kind of with the modeling. It's just numbers. I mean, you gotta create a budget, and then in order for it to work, you got to be disciplined to that budget. So and you may get in business. It's like one of the things we talked about in the first episode is this thing about cash down. A lot of times when we're starting a dealer who's brand new, we can't tell them what to expect their down payment is going to be. We can talk about percentage of selling prices and this and that, but it's hard to say.
We can give them some advice about what they should ask for at the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, we're definitely going to do that, but I just mean, you can't build this model on, you can be consistent about where your sales price is going to be, but we're trying to reach a certain volume. And that's another episode, another tangent off of this. We can come back and talk about that thing I call the volume formula. It's like when you look at the cost, the impact to your business of running low volume for a period of time and getting a lot of your cash tied up in overhead, that's a thing. And so we probably just need to do a whole separate episode on that one day, because that's something that we've talked about that's amongst the material that's in the Institute, but it's just something that we haven't really talked about much in the morning show. But let's go to these charts. I mean, I think what you see here is, again, there's some, for those who missed the first episode, there's a lot of work that happens over here on this portfolio page. We're using some drivers that, we could translate that into some sort of collateral recovery rate or, whatever you might choose. But really, we're just using it as a way to predict what the incoming cash is going to be, principal, interest, sold repos. I mean, that's cash. And so we do that to drive that. And then what I wanted to just see is really this part right here. And I don't know if you're as large as you can be on the screen for our viewers there, Michelle, but basically all those numbers that you see in red, they're difficult to read because of the way the labels had to be put on there. But what this shows is you saw on the first page that we were just over $1 million in total cash to get this thing off the ground, or to get to cash positive, I should say. So that's, in this particular case, that just over $1 million included income tax as a reserve. So just quickly about that, with income tax, what I've done is I've used the RFC, we use the 30% discount. And so now what you're seeing really is the income tax reserve on the dealership side.
Now an RFC though, and that's a whole nother show. Typically an RFC is not created in the first year.
Well, it depends on volume and then when you start.
Yeah.
Like
if you're starting in October, you're probably not going to create a RFC in that calendar year.
I wouldn't be recommending.
But so the discounts for the RFC, that's a lot of times not in the first months of opening.
Correct. But it typically would be done. Just keep in mind, what we chose to do in this modeling is that we use the discount for the RFC, because if we don't, then our income tax is, sky high. And we know that that's not, anybody who's in this business doing some volume, your CPA is going to recommend, if you didn't hear Jim and Michelle talk about it in the morning show, your CPA is going to recommend, we got to get an RFC set up and get these notes discounted.
If you've got a CPA that understands this kind of stuff. Yeah.
Or if you're also looking at this because you're contemplating buy here, pay here, you also need to look at leasing. So as a quick mention for our friends out in California, LHPH, like, you also want to look at leasing. We're not modeling out leasing here. I hope to come back and bring some of that to you one day. But right now we're looking at just retail installment contracts, conventional buy here, pay here. And so just keep in mind, again, we're using the RFC discount. That's going to reduce the amount of income tax. And all I've done in the modeling is I use the 35% tax bracket, tax rate. And I said, we're going to withhold and put into like a escrow account for the IRS. We're going to reserve the dollars that are income tax based on 35% of our income. Okay. And that's net income after discounting the RFC. So that's what happens here. Is you can see though, the breakdown is, you got these month zero expenses, what I call month zeros, all those expenses leading up to when you get in revenue and start creating your first sales and your first cash flow. So month revenue or month zero expenses are going to be that 30 grand. Your initial inventory, we've got in there to 175 grand. We've got inventory replacement. So we're going to spend 1.4 replacing those 15 cars a month for, by the way, this is 17 months that it takes to get to the 1.048 or whatever the max cash was.
So
across 17 months.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've got to cross that period. You've got 1.4 that you're spending on inventory. You've got 382 grand that we're spending in recon.
That's another topic.
Yeah. We've got 319 that we're spending in overhead at the numbers, again, at the 18 grand that we had loaded in there. TT&L runs 250. Okay, so that was about $1,000. I think
And
I'm
that's
only using like 6%
there
sales
are
tax.
every state is going to be just a little bit
Yeah,
different.
yeah.
So that's
What are your
another thing to be considering.
yeah?
And there are states that require you to pay the tax all up front, and other states
So
that you can
you're
pay
right. It's all the more
as
reason
you.
that these numbers are going to vary,
Yep, they
right? How
really
much
are.
cash is really
Yeah.
required to get over the hump is going to be very different.
hmm
And then reserve for income tax is only 84 grand across that 18 months. I can tell you that's probably low. Like we probably, again, overhead's going to be a thing, but it's just math. I mean, we do know how to calculate the income over on the RFC side. Right now, we're just looking at the dealership side, but we've only withheld about 84 grand in income tax. And now you start to look at the incoming cash side. In the first 17 months, you're going to collect a little over 500 grand in down payments. That's at 2 grand per sale at 15 sales per month. We don't have very many clients average at 2 grand down.
And that's another one of those things that I watch social media and it's like, what are you doing as you're down? And it is all over the place. And it doesn't mean that one is right and one is wrong. It's like, what can your market sustain? What can your inventory sustain? What is it that are you turning a lot of people away so that you can and you're able to not have as much volume so you can get the more down payment? I mean, there's no right way, but
I'm
so
glad
many
you brought
different.
that up because it's like people look at this and think, well, I only want to do $2,000 down. If I can't get at least $2,000 down, I don't want to do the deal. Okay, well, you built your model based on 15 sales a month, but what if you only are able to average selling 7 a month at $2,000 down? What is that? How does that change your whole model here? There's a lot of impact from that. So I think it's just, it's important. And we mentioned NEO at the beginning. We're learning a lot of things about down payment and how
Naveen will say down payment is not it's not the factor.
Yeah.
It is but it's not the factor that everyone thought it was about the success of a loan.
Well, and let's just look at this. I mean, I think when you see this other pie chart, we'll take you inside some of this other numbers. But the principal collected is 552 in that 17 months. We collect,
and that's
381
based
of
on
interest.
about a $450 a month payment. Right?
Yeah, it came out to a little over that, I think. And we're actually not using the average payment. We're using the drivers to project principal and interest. But in this case, and I just do that because I find that it's the most reliable as far as projecting what's going to happen. And then interest collected, I said again, is 380, and then sold repos comes to about 152. So you can see that when I show the pie chart, let's go ahead and look at the pie chart instead, or in addition to. So let's study this a minute. Let's be careful about what we're looking at. Again, all the same numbers that we've already talked about. And what this says is that 84 grand in terms of all the capital that we invested, that 1.048 that we've got invested across 17 months, 8% of that went into income tax reserve. 30 grand went into pre-launch expenses. So that's what that blue wedge is right there. Our initial inventory, which is still an asset, because what we're doing is we're replacing that inventory. So let's assume we paid cash for that opening inventory. We've replaced it every month as we sold. We actually, I think if I remember in the modeling, we started with an inventory of 25 cars and we have a volume of 15 a month. So we're constantly sitting we're replacing 15 and we're sitting on inventory 25. So at the end of that purple wedge right there, that's still an asset to us. We're still sitting on that inventory, right? And so now we've got these uncovered expenses. So that, I don't know what the folks at Harvard would call this, or, in business college, but it's like those expenses that you're experiencing when you're early in business and you do not yet have enough cash flow coming in to cover that overhead. Okay, so that just means that's what I call uncovered expenses. So you're going to have expenses that you're going to be upside down on your operating expenses, some more than others. But there will come a point when you're generating enough cash to cover that overhead. And so
have we ever showed that graph that we show, or that we when we're working with a new dealer?
I don't think we have. We almost never show visuals in morning shows.
We should show that graph, because Jim has based on what someone's model is and all of that, is that he will show this is how many contracts and the point that you need to have to cover your overhead. And here's what it is where you have enough where you can now cover all of your operating expenses.
We
I mean,
already
all your
have
inventory, all of the,
problem
everything.
is we already have White Hat Wednesday. Maybe occasionally we could do a whiteboard Wednesday and just draw some
that
stuff.
might really be, that might be really be a good idea. We actually are investing in a like a rolling whiteboard.
So now you see how it works, folks. You're just witnessing how this stuff happens with us. We just make it up as we go. We just, idea comes and why not?
Yeah, we should do that.
Let's,
yeah, that's a good idea. Okay, so back to the graphic.
So the other part is you got these uncovered expenses, which really in the scheme of things are fairly small in this particular model. I think you would expect in a lot of the charts for that number to look a lot bigger. But then
they're uncovered expenses because as you're going, you're starting to pull in some cash flow, and now those that usually goes towards your overhead versus like covering your expenses.
Yeah, and I didn't explain. We've got tax title and license down in here in the funding of contracts. I included that in the funding of whatever those.
Well, because we have
to fund it.
We finance
that. So we cover the cost of replacing the cars and so on. But so in this case, because we add in all the money, we basically say, okay, the 1.048 in this example, 734,000 of that went into the funding of contracts. So this is kind of problematic, probably requires more explanation than what we're able to give here. But the idea is, for me, when I look at that, I'm thinking, this shows why you really just need a good funding partner, because really I always say when we work with clients on the startup is like, we really want to target that chart that you're talking about. We want to target how many contracts we need to cover overhead, right?
Yes.
And then we need to target how many contracts we need to have paying whatever the monthly payment is or whatever to cover both overhead and the cost of replacing inventory, right? So now if we had that number figured out, then we would know, okay, if we can get to that place, we know how much cash is going to take to get there. And I think you can see that. I always say once we get past overhead, then the dollars are mostly going into earning assets, which is this big purple portion of this. When we're funding contracts, that's money that we're investing and it's going to return to us at some, ROI.
Yeah. It's funny because, we do what we encourage all of our clients to do. We spend so much time working in our business, so much time working on our business. And so we've been recently doing some modeling of some things that are coming in the future. And I'm always like, it's going to cost us X amount of dollars. And Jim's, he's like, okay, now I need to model this for you. He's like, you're going to be bringing in. And so there are so many moving pieces.
Yeah. She tends to look heavily at the expense side. And I think, well, that's fine, but you got to allow the revenue side.
Yeah.
That's true. That's how much cash you're going to need if you never create revenue.
Because maybe that's where dealers are coming from when they say $3 billion, $2 billion is the same thing that I'm looking at. It's like to do this after all of the research that I've done, we need X amount of dollars.
Well,
and it's like, you're going, no, we don't need all of that up front because we're going to be doing all of this other stuff.
Well, and gosh, keep in mind, I've been doing this for 20 years. I mean, I've been working with dealers who are new to it. And I'm always hearing them talk about, I set up my own spreadsheet, or I did my own, napkin sketches or whatever. And I did the math on 10 car sign, whatever. And I think that's not going to get you there like that. I hear you. It's where you start, but until you can model out your portfolio and the cash that's going to be generated from that portfolio, it's hard to model these things on napkins and spreadsheets if you don't have the means to go in there and create that forecasted income that you're going to generate. So that's why it's just problematic. And I think, we do this cash flow modeling for folks, and it's been, and we just still improve it. Like all these charts and stuff, I just add them this morning. Like we'll use that with clients going forward. They can better visualize what's happening. But
it's one of the things I love about you.
Is it?
It really is. It really is. I can do a Netflix.
Hide that.
You're going to hide it now?
No, I'm done now.
Oh yeah. I can do like a Netflix thing over the weekend, and Jim's elbows deep in spreadsheets, and it's like his joy.
When I was in a 20 group, my fellow group members used to tease me about my spreadsheets, and it's all right.
But considering you love doing it and you have spreadsheets that you've been using for 20 years.
I love fishing more, but sometimes I have to do work, So
if only you could do spreadsheets while fishing.
Well, you see a little battery pack in the boat probably. But It's all good.
If
When the
you're just
fish aren't biting.
trolling,
No,
yeah,
that's right.
actually, we could probably figure that out. Huh?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, he would never come home.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
think we could wrap up there. Well, it's like I think what people can see is that there's just a lot of things to look at and doing the math on this. And so I just think we have to be careful about giving advice that is either going to encourage or discourage somebody, and they're operating off incomplete information. So let's just be careful. Let's try to be thorough, when we give this information. And so that's what we're trying to do here today, is give people a point of reference and understand there's ways to get there.
Absolutely. So again, if you are listening on our syndicated stations, you don't see the visual. And so if you want to be able to see some of the visuals of what we're doing, please go, and I'll throw that up there for those of you who can see, but still want to go there. Our YouTube channel, Jim Rhoads / The Octane Group, or just look up the Buy Here Pay Here Morning Show.
Please subscribe over there.
Please subscribe.
That's a good way to make sure you get notification about all the stuff we got.
And the thing when you subscribe to that, anytime that there's new content, not just from the Buy Here Pay Here Morning Show, but when that podcast drops that you just did yesterday with Steve Levine and Brent, that will be
YouTube will
you'll be like in real time that it's dropped and that it's available for you to be able to watch. And it's always good information when you are doing that. So, and, if there's anything we can do to help you, please feel free to reach out. You can call or text us 903-816-0216, 903-816-0216.
That's me. You'll get my cell.
You'll get Jim's cell, and, or you can go to octane.group and, ask for a discovery call.
Exploratory meeting.
Yeah, we do. It's like a 30-minute discovery call, and we can just, you can schedule that right there. So, all right. Anything else before we let everybody go and back to their Friday?
Not a thing. I think, go enjoy your Buy Here Pay Here Friday, and have a great weekend.
I know. Hey guys, we will see you on Monday. We've got a lot of work we're going to be doing until then. So until then, have yourself a really great weekend.